Hey everyone, happy Sunday to you. I hope all is well. We're cruising right along here. We're definitely on the back nine of this thing. This week you wrapped up, or this past week you wrapped up chapter 32, quiz 3, on the process of treatment, and then this week we're sticking with the treatment setting theme here and doing chapter 34, DB6, on counseling in a treatment setting, and this more specifically relapse and other problems encountered in a treatment setting. So a couple of things on my thoughts on treatment. I worked in a treatment setting for about 8 years. Um, I'm very familiar with how they operate, and I encourage you to get familiar as well. If you're going to work with this population, it's our responsibility, right? If you're going to ask people to go to treatment, then you should know about the treatment centers, and I would encourage you all to tour them where you can. Look, I get it. We're all busy. But this is what makes us good clinicians, right? We know about the facilities we're sending to. We know their philosophies. We know their logistics, how they operate, right? What they do, what they believe. And then while staff may turn over at these places, philosophies rarely do. They remain intact for the most part. Not always. You have to keep your list updated, but reach out to your business development reps. All the treatment centers have them. They'll come out to you. They'll bring you lunch. They'll talk to you. They'll meet you for coffee. They'll do whatever they can do to educate you on their program and get you out to their facility. I've toured lots of facilities because, again, if I'm asking somebody to go, then I want to know where I'm sending and I want to know about them. Then, just like with these meetings, I can make a more informed decision on what I want to recommend, right, as well, by knowing these things. So I encourage you all to really, if you're going to work with this population, it's something you need to do. That said, coming up this week is more, relapse and other problems. And I'm going to tell you, as a clinician, I struggle with the term relapse today. And I've talked to you all often about language. And many professionals, it's the accepted terminology, but we know better. It should be, return to use. A relapse comes with this negative connotation, and we can debate this all day long. But I think the language we use as clinicians matter. If I'm in a self-help group, hey, whatever works, right? But as a clinician, look, I either drink or I don't drink. I use drugs or I don't use drugs. When we say things like addict, alcoholic, relapse, it all comes with this stigma in some way. So be mindful of that. But there's lots of problems in treatment, not just people returning to use. People bring drugs and alcohol into facilities. I've personally experienced a young man drink hand sanitizer at one point. There's lots of behavioral problems in treatment. Look, people are in treatment. They're not at their best place in their life, right? They're coming off of drugs or alcohol. They're uncertain about their futures. Many of them or this is their first time, but then you have many what we call frequent flyers, right? People that have been and just can't seem to get there yet. And then they become, here's been my experience as an outpatient counselor at a treatment center, is they come in, for those that come multiple times or have been to multiple centers in the past, they come in, they're remorseful up front. I did it again, I messed up. And then about midway through, they get really salty that they're there, and this is the same stuff I've heard, right? Yeah, it hasn't changed. So there's there's just lots of behavioral people trying to get in relationships. There's all kinds of issues you face in treatment that are separate from just the task at hand of trying to teach someone skills not to be abstinent from drugs or alcohol. So that said, treatment centers are about abstinence. They're not about harm reduction. I'm not saying there's not any out there that aren't. I don't know of any. They're typically abstinence. I mean, if I'm going to a treatment center, that's the purpose of a treatment center, is to separate me from the substance and put me in a structured environment and teach me some skills. And it's also about managing expectations of a treatment center, right? And helping families navigate that as well, because it's families sometimes expect to be cured after a 30-day treatment. And let's be honest, 30 days is an insurance number. That's who came up with that number, not the profession. I think in the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s, my understanding was treatment was like the Wild West. You could just keep people for as long. And so insurance got fed up with that and said, no, 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 we're not doing that. And people developed programs around, and now your normal is 30-day stay for an inpatient. So let's talk about treatment for a second. Most places are set up, and I'm sorry, my little dog's just going to keep barking. I'm not going to get up and do all the things. So just bear with me on that. But the most of them are set up in this way. Is a detox, 5 to 7 days, a medically supervised detox, which means you see a doctor or a physician's assistant every day. Nurses monitor your vitals, that kind of thing, help you through the withdrawal symptoms. Then you have residential, RTC, right, which is a residential treatment center. That is where you live there. You're bubbled up. You do all the work. You're separated from the substance, right? Then you have PHP, Partial Hospitalization Program, which is where it's a day program, Monday through Friday in most cases, 8 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever. They're they're a little bit different everywhere, but that's basically a day program. And the idea is you step down, they call it a step down process, from being housed and lived 24/7 to being able to go home and experience those things at night, yet still have your accountability and your groups and all the things to come process all that in your structure, right? And then there's outpatient, IOP, intensive outpatient program. That's usually, it's anywhere from 3 to 4 days a week, 3 hours a day usually, for those days, depending on which program. Some are 3, some are 4. And they usually offer evening, or some offer both afternoon, morning, evening, whatever. Every program is different. But the idea is, again, you step down to less structure, right? And start living your life, working all the things. And then some places offer an SOP, supportive outpatient, which is, these vary pretty wildly. Some are 2 days a week, some are 1 day a week, some are 1 day a week with a, check-in via phone once or twice a week. They're very different, but the idea is you just step down to a little more, for lack of a better term, freedom, for less structure and more accountability, self-accountability. You're involved in recovery groups and those kinds of things, ideally. Look, that's ideal. It's rare people do all of those steps in that order. Some people just come to outpatient with no detox, no residential, no PHP. Some people just come to PHP. Some people just come to res. Some people just do detox. Some people do detox, then go right to IOP. Like, it's very different. So many factors there: finance, work, willingness. Most professional research supports that the longer someone engages in a recovery program, the significantly higher probability of them having long-term success, meaning abstinence from drugs or alcohol. So get to know your treatment centers, because if you work with this population, you're going to need that resource. So moving forward, next week, week 12, this will be the 3/4 way mark. And so, will be your last external meeting to attend, and it'll be on Celebrate Recovery, or you have a choice of Celebrate Recovery or Refuge Recovery or Dharma Recovery. Celebrate Recovery is a Christian 12-step program. Much like AA and NA, they're same 12-step philosophy, same 12 steps, but they're at a church, and instead of higher power as AA and NA use, the Celebrate Recovery says, no, it's the Christian God, and here's the biblical principles behind each step. Another difference is they're a little longer. They're always held at a church. And in the beginning, everybody's together, and they do testimonials, and most of the time they have like some kind of potluck kind of dinner thing. Then they separate into gender-specific groups, right? And they don't use the labels, addicts, alcoholics, whereas Alcoholics Anonymous, it is Alcoholics Anonymous, and they have a philosophy of what they call a singleness of purpose. A desire to stop drinking is what you have to be here, right? So that's fair for that program. But with Celebrate, just like with Smart, they don't use the labels alcoholic, addict, and they say you just have to have hurts, habits, or hang-ups, and you're welcome here. So you may be in a group, just like at Smart Recovery, with someone with an alcohol use disorder, someone with a substance use disorder of another kind, someone with codependency issues, someone with love addiction, someone who's just struggling. You may be with an Al-Anon, so to speak, like a family member. That has great value, in my opinion, because if we get past the exact events, like, we're programmed, pun intended, from Alcoholics Anonymous because it was the first recovery group that developed this style of, and they say one alcoholic helping another. There's nothing like it, and I agree. I couldn't agree with that more, honestly. In that setting, right? In a self-help group setting, yeah, I absolutely want someone that's going to be relatable. However, I think when I say we're programmed to view recovery that way, is now that's what we think of all the time. And if we, like, I had a gentleman who was a straight up drinker, and he said, Dan, I went to one of those NA meetings and I couldn't relate. I've never been to a drug den before. And I kind of chuckled a little bit with him, and I'm like, yeah, nobody's been to a drug den, bro, since like 1972, right? 78. They don't call them that anymore, right? But his point was, I live a very different lifestyle drinking than someone doing cocaine does. Yeah, no question. The lifestyles are different, and the ability to have someone that can relate to that, yeah, there's nothing like that. That's we live different lifestyles. I can't relate to that being in a dope house, right? A trap house. I can't relate to that. Just like they probably can't relate to being passed out by 1 o'clock, right? So I understand that philosophy. However, if we're able to see past the behaviors, then we're able to get to the feelings. And what's driving both behaviors is probably very similar. So there's great value in that, even if they're not the same. So, that it's a wonderful program, just like all the others. As I've said, they're all wonderful programs. If you're a person of faith, of Christian faith, it's a no-brainer. That's where I'll recommend every time to check out. Then you have Refuge Recovery or Recovery Dharma. They're basically the same program. Somebody got mad at somebody, split off, and created Recovery Dharma, it's the same program basically. Refuge Recovery. They're based on, they're a 12-step program based on Buddhism principles. Phenomenal program. Same thing. They don't use the labels either, but they do like 20 minutes of meditation up front. Some people love it. Some people less than love it. Again, every program has a value, and every program is good. They're just not always a good fit for everyone. So this week we do our DB on the problems and treatment. Then we move on to this last external meeting. And again, I want to encourage you to attend whatever meeting you attend the other on your own. This isn't about an assignment. This is about learning how these programs work, so you can educate your clients on what they are and what they are not. Right? You should be wanting to go to at least one of all of these meetings. Every one you can ever attend, you should go so you can know more about it to encourage your clients. So then we have, obviously, week 13, you'll do your DB7, which will be your summary of your paper. And now looking forward, then you only have 3 assignments left. That will be your last DB. Then you have your last quiz. And then you have a personal reflection paper, and we're out of here, man. So you literally have 5 assignments left in this course. Be watching your points. Make sure you're where you want to be. Reach out to me, guys, if I can be of any kind of help, and we'll talk soon.